Hello and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering EDH deck tech idea. Today we are taking a look at Serah Farron, a 3 mana 2/2, and the first legendary creature spell you cast each turn costs 2 less to cast. Furthermore, she has a triggered ability because at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 2 or more other legendary creatures, you may transform Serah. Once transformed, you will receive Crystallized Serah, a legendary artifact that says the first legendary creature spell you cast each turn costs 2 less to cast, and it also has a nice anthem effect because legendary creatures you control get +2/+2. This is a Celestia Legends deck, which will use Serah as a discount mechanic to cheat out powerful creatures really early on, and then transform her to give those creatures a nice anthem boost to finally swing for the win. If we are able to ramp in the early game, we can bring out Serah, maybe before that also another legendary creature, and in the same turn another legendary creature, so we will have 2 or more other legends. That will enable us to immediately transform Serah and have the perfect sequencing and tempo for this deck to work. Other cheap legends that will just cost 1 mana as soon as Serah is on the battlefield are, for example, Aerith Gainsborough, a 3 mana 2/2 with lifelink, and whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Aerith. Furthermore, when she dies, put X +1/+1 counters on each legendary creature you control, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Aerith. With Serah's anthem effect, this will already be a really strong beater, and in addition to that, it will also have lifelink, which also works in our favor. We play Thalia, Heretic Cathar, a 3 mana 3/2 with first strike, and creatures and non-basic lands your opponents control enter tapped. This is great as we slow down our opponents while also progressing with our game plan. We play Legolas Greenleaf, a 3 mana 2/2 with reach, and it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. And whenever another legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Legolas, and guess what? This will happen quite often in this deck. Furthermore, when it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. Just as Thalia, we will keep our opponents in check with Lauren of the Third Path, a 3 mana 2/1 with Vigilance, and when it enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. You can also tap her, so you and target opponent each draw a card. A really powerful turn 1 play can be Yoshimaru, Ever Faithful, a 1 mana 1/1, and whenever another legendary permanent enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Yoshimaru. And to make sure that we never run out of gas, we also play Reiki, the History of Kamigawa, a 3 mana 1/2, and whenever you play a legendary spell, draw a card. With these cheap creatures, we should be able to flip Serah really quickly, and from then on we can keep taking over with our other powerful creatures. For example, Karametra, God of Harvest, a 5 mana 6/7 with Indestructible, and as long as your devotion to green and white is less than 7, Karametra isn't a creature. It has a very powerful triggered ability because whenever you cast a creature spell, which will happen often in this deck, you may search a library for a forest or plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. We play Ojer Kaslem, Deepest Growth, a 5 mana 6/5 with Trample, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards from the top of your library. You may put a creature card and or land card from among them onto the battlefield and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. If it dies, you return it to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control, and it is a land. One of the most powerful creatures in this deck is Gandalf the White, a 5 mana 4/5 with Flash, and you may cast legendary spells and artifact spells as though they had Flash. Furthermore, if a legendary permanent or an artifact entering or leaving the battlefield causes the triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Serah discounts your first creature spell in each turn, which means that if you can play your creatures with Flash, you will also get a discount in each of your opponent's turns. We play Zuruk and Goreclaw, a 6 mana 6/5 with Trample, and other creatures you control have Trample. Furthermore, whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on it and it gains haste until end of turn. This haste enabler in green will lead to very explosive turns, and as this deck plays all around non-token creatures, he's a perfect fit for this one. We play Tolsimir Wolfblood, a 6 mana 3/4, and other green creatures you control get +1/+1, and other white creatures you control also get +1/+1. You can also tap it to create Voja, a legendary 2/2 green and white wolf creature token. And to make sure that nobody messes with your turn, we play Dragonlord Dromoka, a 6 mana 5/7. This spell can't be countered, it has flying and lifelink, and your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. As we are in Celestia colors, we can play very powerful artifacts and enchantments that will help us to win the game, which is why we play Mirari's Wake, a 5 mana enchantment, and creatures you control get +1/+1, and whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana of any type that land produced. Another anthem effect comes from Day of Destiny, a 4 mana legendary enchantment, and legendary creatures you control get +2/+2. Another great anthem, and probably even better than Day of Destiny, is from Flowering of the White Tree, a 2 mana legendary enchantment, and legendary creatures you control get +2/+1 and have reward 1. Non-legendary creatures on the other hand get +1/+1. The strongest saga that we can play in this deck is War of the Last Alliance, a 4 mana saga, and on the first and second chapter you search your library for a legendary creature card, reveal it and put it into your hand. On its third chapter, creatures you control gain double strike until end of turn and the ring tempts you. A very powerful Cardadvantage piece is Mirror of Galadriel, a 2 mana legendary artifact, and for 5 mana and tapping it you scry 1 and then draw a card. But this ability is discounted because it costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. For even more Anthem and also card draw, we play Tribute to the World Tree, a 3 mana enchantment, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card if its power is 3 or greater, otherwise put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. As it is our game plan to build a very powerful board of creatures, we have to be afraid of board wipes. This is why we play very powerful protection spells in our colors. For example, Dawn's Truce, a 2 mana instant, and you can gift a card to an opponent as the spell resolves. You and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn, and if the gift was promised, permanents you control also gain indestructible until end of turn. We play the green version, Heroic Intervention, a 2 mana instant, permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. A great single target protection spell is Defend the Rider, a 1 mana instant, choose 1. Either target permanent you control gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, or you create a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token with this token set its mounts and cruise vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. With Final Fantasy we also got Restoration Magic, a 1 mana instant, and you can choose one of the 3 modes. Either for 0 additional mana, target permanent gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. For 1 additional mana, target permanent gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn and you gain 3 life. Or for 4 additional mana, permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn and you gain 6 life. For even more single target protection, we play Mithril Code, a 3 mana legendary artifact equipment with flash and indestructible, and when it enters the battlefield, attach it to target legendary creature you control, and then the equipped creature is indestructible. One of my favorite protection spells in white is Clever Concealment, a 4 mana instant with Convoke, and any number of target non-land permanents you control face out. You want to win more? You get it. We play Yeva, Nature's Herald, a 4 mana 4/4 with flash, and you may cast green creature spells as though it had flash. Just as with Gandalf, this can be extremely powerful, as in one turn cycle you can cheat a lot of different discounted creatures into play. We play Urza's Ruinous Blast, a 5 mana legendary sorcery, and you exile all non-land permanents that aren't legendary. As we are playing a Legends deck, this can turn into a one-sided board wipe. One of our final overrun effects comes from Overwhelming Stampede, a 5 mana sorcery. Until end of turn, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. This is a very synergistic overrun effect with our commander because we will get an Anthem on its backside. And last but not least, we play Akroma's Will, a 4 mana instant, choose 1. If you control a commander, as you cast a spell, you may choose both. And then, creatures you control gain flying, vigilance and double strike until end of turn with the first mode, or creatures you control gain lifelink, indestructible and protection from all colors until end of turn. Alright guys, these were a few cards that I would play in Serah Farron. Let me know which cards you would add to the deck, which legendary creature I shall feature next. Make sure to check out my full deck list in the notes below, and then I would say see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.